To the emperors in Beijing, Taiwan was never the heart of the empire. It was the edge, a footnote, a frontier, a place to send the unwanted, generals who failed, scholars who rebelled, bandits too clever to kill. It lay across the strait, half wild and far away, and yet, year by year, season by season, it was being reshaped, not by decree, but by arrival. By farmers, traders, soldiers, and stories. Because even on the margins of empire, history finds a way in. In 1683, the Qing crossed the Taiwan Strait. They defeated Koxinga's grandson. And with barely a fight, Taiwan became part of the empire. But the Qing did not arrive with vision. They arrived to end a problem. They dismantled the kingdom of Tungning, absorbed the forts, declared Taiwan a prefecture of Fujian. Then, they hesitated. Taiwan, to them, was unruly, humid, expensive to govern. Some even argued it should be abandoned. But people kept coming. Settlers from Fujian and Guangdong, crossing over in search of land, opportunity, escape. And so, reluctantly, Beijing drew a border on the western plains. Everything east, the mountains, the forests, the indigenous world, was declared off-limits, a policy meant to preserve peace that would ignite conflict instead. The border was a line on paper, but paper does not stop people. Settlers moved past the western plains, clearing forests, digging irrigation, planting rice. They called it cultivation. To others, it was encroachment. Conflicts flared over land, over hunting grounds, over who had the right to call this place home. Some indigenous villages struck back. Raids, ambushes, burned fields. The Qing responded with walls, and then with war. Campaigns were launched to pacify the savages. Mountains were renamed, rivers redrawn. The official maps changed, and with each new season, the frontier moved east, not as a single conquest, but as a slow erasure. Taiwan was now part of the Qing Empire, but only just. It was governed as an appendage of Fujian, an afterthought across the sea. Officials were rotated every few years. They arrived with little knowledge and left with little care. Some came to get rich, others to serve out punishment. There were taxes, there were laws, but justice, that was harder to find. Corruption ran deep. Local elites formed shadow governments, clan networks, secret societies, temple militias. They filled the gaps where the state was absent. The Qing built a bureaucracy. But Taiwan ran on something older: connections, loyalty, and fear. It was said, every 3 years an uprising, every 5 a rebellion. And the emperor? He was hundreds of miles away. Taiwan was governed from above, but lived from below. And below, there was pressure. Clan rivalries turned violent. Tax revolts broke out in market towns. Religious sects staged uprisings in the hills. Some rebels wanted lower taxes, others, a different dynasty. Still others just wanted to be left alone. The Qing crushed each in turn, sometimes with force, sometimes by co-opting local leaders. Meanwhile, indigenous resistance never fully stopped. Whenever settlers pushed too far, they pushed back. The Qing labeled them raw or cooked, civilized or not, depending on their willingness to obey. But many refused the terms altogether. To them, the empire was not a ruler. It was a pressure, constant, shifting. unwelcome. Over time, the island reshaped those who came. Han settlers married indigenous women. Fujianese dialects blended with local words. Gods from across the sea were housed in mountain shrines. Villages held 2 harvest festivals, one for the ancestors, one for the spirits of the land. In the fields and forests, boundaries blurred, identities merged. Some indigenous groups adopted Han customs to survive. Some Han communities took on local rituals without even noticing. A new culture was forming, not from empire, but from encounter. Not pure, not simple, but alive. For a time, Taiwan drifted in obscurity. But the world was changing. In the 1800s, Western ships appeared offshore. Some were traders. Some were missionaries. Some wrecked on Taiwan's reefs. And when sailors were killed by local tribes, gunboats followed. The British came. The French came. The Americans came. Not to govern, but to remind the Qing the island was being watched. Christian missions took root. Maps were redrawn. Naturalists wrote of orchids and butterflies. Taiwan, once ignored, was now exotic, enticing, exposed. And the Qing? Still distant, still unsure. While others saw opportunity, Beijing saw only trouble. But that would no longer be enough. For 2 centuries, Taiwan sat on the edge of empire. Never fully claimed, never fully free. It was a place of migration, resistance, and reinvention. A land shaped more by the people who came than the rulers who tried to control it. But empires rarely stay disinterested. By the end of the 1800s, a new power was rising across the East China Sea. It would not ignore Taiwan. It would seize it. Next time, the Empire of Japan arrives, and Taiwan becomes a colony.